I really wish I could completely understand what people kind of viewed my family as, because it would be very interesting to find out, because I think I'm still, after 22 years on the planet, still trying to really figure out what outsiders think of my family, because there's just so much going on a regular basis. But if I had to guess about what people could probably think of my family, um, shoot, from an outsider view, we're a lot to handle. Like, we have a lot going on. We kind of take more pride in my dad's kind of lineage and heritage, cultural side, because both of his parents are Greek. Even though my mom comes from a split American and German family, a lot of our cultural practices are kind of more of the Greek side rather than the Texan and German side. We're loud. We typically talk over each other, not in like a rude, like disrespectful way, but just kind of how our families like operate. We don't really take a whole lot of stuff to heart, so it's not uncommon for us to say stuff that most families would like be like, oh my God, we got to take a step back and talk about this. I've only had a couple of people who have like asked me like, why does your family do that, or ask me like, is your family okay? I'm always kind of surprised when people ask me, and I'm like, what do you mean? And typically it's about like, oh, like you guys seem like you're fighting. Like it seems like somebody's about to start like throwing hands and fist fighting in here. And then I'm like, oh wow, like I had no idea that it was coming across as that. In a weird way, like how most people, like if you're yelling and talking over somebody, usually it means that like you don't like them and you don't care for them. It's almost the opposite, kind of with our way, because if you're talking over somebody and you're raising your voice, it shows that you're comfortable with them. Because if you're not comfortable with somebody, you're not going to raise your voice and talk over them because you don't know that person. Yeah, it's definitely interesting, bringing in my American friends and non-European friends to invite over and have them experience kind of the cauldron of what craziness my family has to offer. Greek Easter is kind of the mecca of all Greek events. For people who don't really know what Greek Easter is, Greeks were Christian, but we're Orthodox. So the Orthodox Easter is the Sunday after normal Easter. So although we celebrate like putting out the eggs for little kids and stuff on normal Easter and stuff, we don't have such a huge event like a lot of other families do. We have that on Greek Easter. So on Greek Easter, it's we roast a lamb on a spit, and we're drinking all day long. There's a Greek feast inside. We usually invite a bunch of people over. It's a whole thing. Like a lot of people, a lot of alcohol, a lot of food, a lot of Greek going on. And if Greeks are very boisterous and loud without alcohol, you can probably imagine how they would be if you add alcohol to the process. It is a lot. It's a lot of yelling, a lot of music, a lot of people who maybe had a little bit too much to drink, a lot of food. Some of the cultural dynamics and kind of stuff that we do that I can attribute to strictly being Greek. So typically a lot of Greek kids, when they're in grade school, are kind of the kids that get in trouble for like maybe talking out of turn or being a little bit too loud, because we're around it so much that it's kind of just like in our skin that like we do it by nature. It's like habit. Some of the Greek holidays that we practice and we celebrate. One is called Ohi Day. Ohi in Greek means no. The day represents during the World War when Mussolini and the Axis powers were making settlements in European countries. The day commemorates the start of when Mussolini went to the Greek prime minister and was saying, can we have settlement in your country, and you'll be compensated. And the Greek prime minister had one word to say to Mussolini, Ohi, no, and that's it. We have the longest standing deterrent force of them trying to settle in a country. So that's a day that kind of is celebrated a lot overseas, although we kind of now like post it on our story if we're in the U.S. like, oh, it's Ohi Day. Like we're not throwing parties like they are overseas in Greece. Right. Like in Greece, Ohi Day, it's huge. Like they shut down streets. They have festivals. They do a lot of stuff around it. And here, there's not as many Greeks, even in big Greek like areas. So typically, you're not really drinking or celebrating or eating huge feasts because of it. Every time that we go and visit my yaya in Richmond, because my grandfather passed away like 8 years ago of ALS, so she's the only one who's still left in the grandparents, and she still lives in the same house that my dad and his siblings grew up in Richmond. Every time that we go and visit her, doesn't matter what time of the year, doesn't matter when we're coming, it doesn't matter if we have told her, yeah, we have eaten dinner, we're full, we had just eaten on the road, don't make anything for us. No matter what we say, it's like it doesn't register for her. We'll walk in the door, she'll have like a freaking 5-course meal out. It's like, do you not, we just told you don't cook anything. But it is very sweet. You can't get mad at her because it's out of love and it's sweet. A lot of what people think of Greece is Greek mythology and all the gods and stuff we see on TV. Although it's a part of our like ancient history, a lot of that stuff like we know like okay, there really wasn't a Greek gods. But it is cool because it instills a lot of the morals and values that we have as people. And as a culture, we're Orthodox Christians, so we do the same things a lot of other Christians do. God, the devil, Jesus, the Virgin Mary. It's a lot of the same things I think a lot of people don't really understand, and it's comical because when you hear people like ask you like, oh, like so what's your favorite Greek god? You almost just like chuckle. You're like, what do you mean? I think my dad was telling me when I was younger that my papu and my yaya went to the church and was asking the priest, we want to go to the States, like how can we do this like with the amount of money that we had, because they had next to nothing. So he contacted somebody that he knew who was formerly living in Greece, who had moved to the Richmond area, and he was like, I can call him, and if you guys are willing to catch a boat and then and meet somebody in Ellis Island, New York, and then they'll drive you to Richmond, and you guys could settle down there if you guys would like. And he's like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Starting life in Richmond, that my dad grew up in an awesome household in Richmond with them, and they had my grandpa and grandma had 2 more kids, and a lot of them are still living in Richmond. My dad's the only one who really left. My dad and his youngest sister are really the only 2 that left out of Richmond. So kind of that little thing is kind of what sparked this whole Matenopoulos in the U.S. My whole thing with this documentary is I want to make it so that people feel normal asking questions. I wish people not only in that aren't a part of Greek culture, I wish people would just ask more questions in general, because then they could kind of break a lot of the misconceptions and misunderstandings that people have that have to do with our cultural background. Like, we love to hear that, because not only is it funny because we haven't thought about it that way, it gives us a chance to tell them that, like, yeah, although it might seem like that, it's not like that, and let me tell you why. And then they can maybe, if one of their friends sees us and they're together, then they can pass it on and be like, oh no, it's not like that. Like here, this is why they do it. And then they're like, oh, okay. And it makes people more comfortable with us. I feel like asking questions is like the biggest part of learning and being able to be accepting of people. But if you ask questions to them and you're like, hey, so like, why do you do that? Or like, where does that come from? Then you get a better understanding on the person, and then you can connect a lot more with them, because there's a lot of stuff that Americans do that we find to be a little bit weird too. But we're comfortable asking them, and then once we ask them, it's a lot less weird, because then we see that, oh, it comes from something. There's a reason why they do it. It's not just because they want to be weird.